All right, wonderful, Kyle. And I just will say a couple of words about this club for the sake of our guests, I think we have our welcoming Furzy, who is a guest speaker panelist. Shirley, welcome. And it looks like Nazir is joining us. So if this is your first time at our meeting, we have a somewhat unique format. I can't say it's a consistently unique format. I can say it's consistently unique, but it is also inconsistently unique. In other words, from one month to the next, we may switch up what the agenda looks like. As a club with a focus on storytelling and humor, we often drop a few roles that you might see in a traditional club, such as table topics, grammarian, counter. We make some assumptions that people who are really honing their humor storytelling skills may be doing so at a point where they have already achieved some of the more basic communication skills. So we operate with that assumption. You won't see those roles tonight. There is time for audience interaction. And another thing that sets our club apart, you will notice, is that we have 3 evaluators for our speakers, typically, not our panelists, but for our speaker tonight. And the 3 evaluators will each focus on a different aspect of the speech. One on storytelling, one will focus on humor, and one will focus on content, as though it's a pathway project. There is some objective that the speaker might be trying to achieve. Again, and I will drop that. I will say that's typical, but it's not typical tonight because Furzy is joining us as a practice for his World Championship of Public Speaking. So all we're going to know about his speech tonight is his title. And the evaluators will give him whatever they need to give him, whatever emerges at the moment. Thank you. Lee says, yes, we consistently, the consistency is we do consistently change. So with that, welcome club members. Glad to see you all tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to our Toastmaster for the evening. TMOD. Yay, me, Mary Morrison. Woohoo! I know. Wow, Mary Show. I was filling in tonight for our president, Emmy Bartholomew, who texted Kyle and I imagine in a moment of somewhat high anxiety for her. She was running late on a flight, delayed everything, and she is now in traffic en route home and would not make it before our meeting started. So thankfully, we have all of that power of the technology, so she could let us know that. But I do kind of want to go over tonight's agenda because even for our members, this will be a meeting that we haven't kind of ran before. We do have a speaker, and that is a guest speaker, Furzy Gotwako. And Furzy will do speech. Then we will he'll give that speech. The evaluators can go off and evaluate, meaning you don't really go off, you just do it, because you're going to be paying attention to Helen Her, who will be moderating a panel with 3 panelists tonight, and each panelist will be focusing on a specific aspect of humor. Then we'll take a little bit of a break. We will open it up for Q&A for the panelists that Helen will also moderate. Then we'll turn it over to our general evaluator. The general evaluator will call on each of the evaluators and give an evaluation of the meeting. And Lee is going to be our general evaluator tonight. Thank you for that last minute change because that was going to be Emmy, and as I just said, she couldn't make it. So we do have panelists. Karen is here, Furzy is here, Kyle is here, woo! Helen is here, Cynthia is a story evaluator, she's here. Just want to make sure everybody's here before I move it on. Phil is here, yes, and Lee is here, and Cheryl is our timer. Cheryl has marked herself in the corner. You can see she's got her hand raised so that you can all track her. She's got all the timings. Now, here will be maybe somewhat of a surprise. I'm hoping that I got all the times right and that the people who are speaking know that the times I gave Cheryl are the times that they have also. So Furzy, your 5 to 7 minute speech. So I'm going to actually not do that part. Before I turn anything else over to anybody, Cheryl, tell us about the times that people will expect. Do your job.
That's a good idea. So I can make sure that I did write it down right on my pad here. So Furzy, I got down 5 to 7 minutes. I'm going to give him green at 5, at 6, yellow, and at red. And this is what the green one looks like. So, whoops, red one. There's the green one. And so I'll do 5, 6, and 7. The panelists are 3 to 5. So I'll do 3 green, yellow, 4, and 5 minutes. I'll do red. The question and answer panel for Helen will be 15 minutes. So I'll do yellow at 18. Okay. And 20 will be the red. The story content and humor evaluations will be 4 minutes. So I'll do 2 green, 3 yellow, and 4 will be the red. And then I got down, I'm going to do the general evaluator because there's several things going on there. I'm going to do 2 to 3 minutes, Karen, for you as the evaluator. And then the round robin's going to be 9 minutes. So it'll be 7, 8, and 9. And hopefully that sounds right to everybody. Does anybody have a problem with that?
How much time for the panelists again?
The panelists are 3 to 5 minutes, and it's 3 green, yellows 4, and 5 is red.
Thank you, Cheryl. Well done. It's a very complex job tonight to serve as timer, so I really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you giving me the times because I tried to figure it out myself and I was getting lost.
I know. Who knew? There's been a lot of emails back and forth about all these timing things. So hopefully we've got it all. It's public now. Whatever your expectations were before, now you know what you'll see on the timing devices from Cheryl. So great. And Cheryl, you can turn that green off. That'd be awesome.
Oh, yes, sorry about that.
No worries. I'm going to introduce Furzy as though he is a contestant. Speaker number 1, Furzy Gotwako. Who is in the chair? Who is in the chair? Furzy Gotwako.
How do you help those who come to you for help? Imagine somebody you care about sitting in that chair, needing your advice. How do you talk to them? Fellow Toastmasters, Laugh Lab Storymasters. I don't know if today is going to give you something to laugh about, but it is going to give you some very critical information that you need to know because it's going to talk about how to help those who are closest to us. For me, it's often a student because as a teacher, that's who I often have to help. And I've always thought that the best way to help students was to teach them about one of my successes. So I decided to tell them about how I overcame my fear of heights. I have a paralyzing fear of heights. But I decided to overcome my fear of heights by going on a zipline canopy tour. What could be worse? And so I get up to the top of a mountain with my fellow folks, and they strap you into a vest, a harness, and then they click you onto the zip line that goes across from one mountain to the other. And then they push you off. And you hang on for dear life, looking at the beautiful view through the eyes of maybe dying. And right over there at the end is a guy with a camera going, smile. And I'm looking while I'm about to die. But then I get to the end. And then they send you back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And after about 8 to 10 times, you are feeling great and you have the photo to prove it. And then the guide says, but wait, now we got to get off the mountain. We're going to rappel off the mountain. You know what rappelling is? You see, ziplining is when you go across the mountain on a rope, and there's a clip to make sure that you don't die. But when you rappel, the rope goes up and down. You could die. I let them go first. You go next. You go next. And finally, it's my turn. The guide reiterates, let go of the rope piece by piece and keep your feet below you like you're walking down a mountain to your death. I'm against the wall. I'm hanging onto the rope. And I let go a little bit at a time, but then it ends up letting all the way. And I rip through my fingers. The heat is burning. And I end up upside down with my feet above my head. And my vertigo kicks in. And at this point, all I can do is stare at the rope and stare at the wall, hoping I don't die. And everybody down below me is going, put your feet down, put your feet down. And I can't put my feet down. Probably because of a lack of upper body strength. I can't put my feet down. And they all keep yelling at me, put your feet down. Because they want to go to lunch. I'm busy dying up here. Finally, as I'm screaming out that I can't move, a face comes into the picture. Huh? It's the guide. And he's looking at me right here. And he says, are you having a little bit of trouble? You can put your feet down now. I was this high off the ground. This high. And he stood right there. And he says, let go of the rope. And I did. And I fell on my, you know. But this didn't hurt anywhere near as bad as this, my pride. Because I had failed. Now, how am I supposed to talk to my students about success and overcoming your fear? But as I laid on the ground, I realized there's something to be gained from this. Who's in your chair that you're talking to? You see, there are several characters in this little scenario. There are those who stand up and say, I am successful. Listen to me. And then there are those who will always be there to say, put your feet down, like they know everything. But there's the guide. The guide was over here and he stood where I could see him. He stood where I could understand the problem. That he was standing on the ground. When we speak to people who need our help, they're not always just sitting where we can see them. Sometimes they're facing that way. And we have to move and meet them where they're at. And then sometimes the person in the chair is there. That's your family member. That's my friend. And we've got to go down to meet them where they are at. Whatever it is that they've got going on in their life. And we've been there. We've got to let them know that we've been there and we know how to help them. Because sometimes to help somebody up, we've got to go down. We have to go down in order to help people up. We have to meet them where they are at and raise them higher. That's how we can best help those who need our help. Contest chair.
All right. Thank you, Furzy. Lovely speech, and we will be able, and I'm not saying that as the contest chair, honestly. But because I just want you to know, I realize a contest chair wouldn't say that. Just like, thank you. The time to let the evaluators do some of their magic and they can write their notes down. Feel free to, if you want to use chat, to send Furzy some comments, you can do that. And then at the end, during our round robin evaluation, you'll also have a chance to provide some feedback to him. I'm so excited to introduce our panelist this evening, or our panel moderator this evening, Helen Herr. Helen and I met, I don't know how many years ago, Helen, when she was a district director or maybe club growth director even. And I was running for international director, possibly serving, there you go. So we see each other annually at least, and this year I'm happy to say we're going to see each other at the convention and we get to pal around a bit. So I'm looking forward to that. Our plans are to go to Disneyland together.
Yeah.
Yay. So join me in welcoming our panel moderator for this evening, club member Helen Herr. Helen.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster of the Day, Mary. To my greatest pleasure, we have a very wonderful session tonight and very special, as Mary described. We always constantly change and we always design something special for our members and guests. And today we will have 3 wonderful panelists for our workshop and panel, which is finding the laughter. So before we kick off the sessions, I want everyone to give a score of yourself. How satisfied are you happy with your sense of humor? Please give a score from 1 to 10 and type that in our chat window. 1 is you are least satisfied with your sense of humor, and 10 is you are super, super satisfied with your sense of humor. Let's see. Oh, okay. To my surprise, everyone has a high expectation to your hand sense formula. So I do hope you will finding some tips, some useful golden tips from our wonderful panelists for our session today. So our panel will compose of 2 parts. The first part is that each of our panelists will share their experience, their skills in each of the topic they own. And then we will have 20 minutes Q&A for each of our panelists. So during the session, if any of you have any questions for each of our panelists, please do feel free to type your question in the chat window so we can address them after they finish their speaking. And for the first session, each panelist will be invited to speak about 5 minutes in each of the topic they owned, and the other panelists will be invited to feel free to add if they want to say anything for the topics of this session. So we will have 3 topics. The first topic is about sense of humor, and the second topic is ability of humor, and third topic is application of humor. So let me first introduce the topic. The topic owner of the first topic, a sense of humor, is our club member, Karen McNema. So Karen is a professional speaker and a leadership consultant. She has always liked laughing, but after years of perfecting her speaking, he has only been moderately successful at making people laugh. She often forgot her punchline or shared it up front. Determined to improve her humor in speaking, he dove into the study of humor, attended World Champion of Public Speaking, Darren LaCroix's Humorous Boot Camp, and began learning humor techniques. And yes, and you can learn to be funny. She learned her style is humor curricula, with a passion for collecting and sharing the things that brings a smile or laugh, often best shared through story. This made her a natural fit to Laugh Lab Storymasters, utilizing her passion, humor, and storytelling. Tonight, he will share some tips on making your audience laugh and how this relieves tension, connects people, and builds teamwork and positive relations in the workplace. Let's get healthier through laughter. So please welcome our DTM, Karen.
Thank you very much, Helen. All right, I think I have my audio shared. I'm going to play a brief little audio here. Give me a thumbs up if you hear it, and I'm starting it now. No? Kyle, are you able to re-give me share rights? When I clicked on it, I couldn't tell if it gave me rights.
Sorry, I didn't take away your share rights. I just stopped the sharing. So click on share, click on the advanced tab, and click on computer audio.
Yeah.
And is your audio playing?
It isn't right now. I'm going to start it back up.
Okay.
Why are you laughing?
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. So how did that make you feel? I saw a few little smiles. I saw a little bit of moving. This video actually goes on for 10 minutes and I could listen to it over and over and over because it's a whole compilation of babies and children laughing. One of the happiest and most wonderful sounds, in my opinion. So why do we laugh? Why do we want to laugh? Why was it important to me to learn how to make people laugh? Well, in this world of stress, this world of tension, we need relief from that. And laughing is one of the best ways to do that. When you laugh, it literally relieves tension. It lowers your blood pressure. It makes you remember things better. It gives you a little mini break. Think about the times you've laughed and it's like, and it also brings you together with people you're with. It connects people, it builds teams and relationships. And here's a really key point. After someone laughs, a big belly laugh, and they laugh, you stop and you pause. And whatever you say next, they will remember. So use that to your advantage when you're a speaker. You get them laughing, and when you stop, when that clapping and that laughing stops, you tell them the most important thing for them to know in that presentation. Craig Valentine, who's one of the world champion of public speaking, used to say, don't add humor, uncover it. I love that because people say, I'm not humorous, I'm not funny, I'm an introvert, I can't do it. And I ask you, have you ever had anything funny happen to you? I'm sure you have. And that means that you can be funny because you share your story and people will laugh. Have you ever had something happen to your kids that were funny? That's another thing. So something that's important when you come in is to know your audience. The more you know about your audience, the better you can be when it comes to humor, because you can talk about a shared concern. One of the things we talked about a little bit before we began was the heat, because I am absolutely feeling the heat, and I figured some of the other Pacific Northwesterners were, because this is unusual for us. I don't have air conditioning, and I have 1 bottle, I have 2 bottles, I have 3 bottles, I have 4, I have 5. Now I just have to drink them. You see, I forget to do that piece of it. But it's important to know a lot of times when I'm at a public event, I will go and just walk and hear the crowd. What are their tension points? Did they just sit in traffic for an hour before getting there? If so, you bet I'm going to talk about traffic and the process that I can, all of a sudden I bring them in and then I can add humor. We can do a callback, like hanging on for dear life, like we had in Furzy speak. And then, they want him to put his feet down so they can go to lunch. Yes, he pulled in some humor in a very serious topic. You can also do things like the power of 3, where you have 2 expected and 1 unexpected. So do it yourself, have someone else do it, or tell your kids not to do it. That's how you get it done. You can redirect and answer, do something totally different than what someone asks. But key is timing. Timing is really important. You'll hear more from the other speakers, I'm sure, about puns and some of the other tools that you can use. But timing with your puns or whatever you're using is critical. For example, you can say a pun, a play on words, and a limerick walked into a bar. No joke. So you see what I did there is I pulled it and made it into a joke, even though it wasn't, and I used a pun to do that. You can use funny words like everyone, bumfuzzle, collywobbles, piffle, dingus. Funny words make people laugh, and you can learn the definitions of them. Something like a description. Only make fun of yourself, not others. I'm half German, half Dutch, so I might be considered a stubborn clogger. So you can pull those kinds of things together. An inanimate object and giving it power, giving it voice is really fun. For example, maybe you're given in a tabletop, it's the lectern, and you say, oh no, this is the first time speaker, they're icebreaker. I can feel them gripping me. They're going to tear the seams. All the sweat is dripping. Oh, it's shaking. You can give it life and exaggerate things. And I will close with the thought that story is really powerful. You can use story anytime to bring in humor. That's my favorite way to do it. And I often bring in kids. Tonight, I'll just share a real snippet of a piece of a story. And this one is not so much a funny, but it's what humor did. I was in a meeting like this. It was a networking meeting and we were all on Zoom. And they were talking about all different kinds of things and meeting people and had speakers and all sorts of things went on. But there was one person that caught my attention through the entire 3-day event because she was doing this. Yes, I love it. Yeah. And just going on, every single person that spoke, she used exaggeration and went on. And I was like, I have to meet this person. I absolutely have to meet her. So we connected afterward. And we now are the best of friends and we meet on a regular basis, all by Zoom. And it was because she was using exaggeration and humor and laughing, belly laughing. And it made me laugh. It made me just laugh to watch her. So the power of laughter is huge. We do it to feel better, to be healthier, to de-stress, connect more deeply. We motivate more effectively, get invited and referred more. We're more memorable, have more fun, and heck, we might even make some more money because of it. Madam Moderator.
Thank you so much, Karen. You intrigue us with a very engaging sound effect and start to share with us a lot of tips. Yeah, so I just want to invite for Kai and Percy, do you have anything to add for this session of sense of humor? What do you think will be the simple way to make people laugh?
Throw a pie at somebody.
I love it. I love it. And you know, I watched a comedian, and he did something that who knows, I might try it. But what he did was he was in an interview, and someone else told a joke. And when they told the joke, the other person just started laughing, and they couldn't help themselves. They were laughing so hard, and that's the ultimate compliment. And they laughed so hard they actually got up and left the room because they couldn't handle it. They were laughing too hard. And that was an example of like throwing a pie in the face. Something dramatic, something jumping up and going out, and not just a simple pun or getting a little smirk, but a big belly laugh. And you can't help but laugh. Laughter's actually involuntary when you really get going, and it's contagious.
I would like to add to this that you need to understand your own strengths and weaknesses and play upon those strengths and weaknesses. There's a comedian I saw on Netflix recently. I think his name is Keith Robertson. He has had 2 strokes. He did an hour-long comedy special, mostly talking about his strokes and how it affected him and how he reacted to it. It was funny. Now, it's not all good family comedy. So don't sit there with your little kids watching it. But I was amazed that he could talk. He could take these 2 strokes that have partially crippled him and do an hour of humor on it. I have a friend over in District 2 who tends to monotone. He talks quickly. He doesn't use much vocal variety. He doesn't pause the sentences. He just keeps going. And I've tried to coach him. He needs to use that to his advantage humor-wise. For instance, telling people he's enraged while maintaining his monotone. Because the juxtaposition of, say, I was completely enraged when he's not showing it at all may create humor. My college roommate couldn't tell a joke to save his life because he'd start telling the joke, he'd get near the punchline, he'd go, oh, I forgot something, and he'd go back and start it over or add the thing in he'd forgotten, and we'd all be... Anyway, what he realized, and one day he was telling a joke, and it's a 30-second joke, and he's 3 minutes into trying to tell this 30-second joke because he keeps having to go back and add things, and we're laughing hysterically, and finally I went, hey, wait a minute. This is so bad, it's got to be on purpose. He's figured out how to tell jokes badly and make us laugh. Play to your strengths.
So I have a follow-up question for you, Kai, since you mentioned about playing your strengths. So what is your humor style based on your strengths?
What is my humor style? Most of my humor is self-deprecating. Most of it is talking about, and I was going to mention this during my little segment, most of it is telling stories about me doing something stupid or the lessons I've learned. And especially, I like to tell about the internal drama. Okay. Most of this club has heard my story about going to the hot tub and the internal debate about whether I was going to go in the hot tub or not. And all the humor is the 2 sides of my personality arguing over it and me exaggerating those sides of my personality to create humor. So that's my style of humor tends to be self-deprecating, internal and exaggeration.
Okay. Wow, you remind me, I mean, the funny speech you made about the dialogue between you and your wife. Since
I
you
also like language. I also like language. My wife and I play with language a bit, so that makes it into my humor too.
Wow, thank you. I'm looking forward to your session in a few minutes. Okay, so let's go to the second session. Our second panelist is Percy Gotuako. He is a six-time district champion winning in District 25, 85, and 128 in evaluation, table topics, and international speech contest events. In August of 2020, he won the District 25 Toastmaster of the Year. He has reached the semifinals of the World Champion Public Speaking 3 times and the finals once. He will compete again this August. Percy is an executive speech coach who has been teaching theater and speech for over 30 years. As a Toastmaster for over 5 years, he has been sharing his insights of successful speaking around the globe. So please help me to welcome Percy to speak about the second topic, which is the ability of humor. And his topic is why am I here? Let's welcome Percy.
I really don't know why I'm here. I just came for the snacks. No. I'm really not funny. I don't do funny. I'm a teacher. We're not allowed to be funny, at least until November. Once November comes, you can crack a smile. You can maybe laugh and, Valentine's, because love is funny. No, I tell you what, I approach humor in a very different way. And part of it is because I'm not sure exactly what makes something funny. I watch Nazir do his speeches. Nazir down at the bottom of my screen. I'm not sure where he is on your radar, but he's incredibly funny and he's always doing humorous. If you notice, of all the contests that I've been in, humorous wasn't one of them. Epic failure if I try to do humor. But in my classroom and as a principal, I use as much humor as I can. And what I think about when I think of humor is, what do we have in common? What do you and I have in common? So let's say a kid comes into my office being led by a police officer in handcuffs. Yeah. And I'm not just talking about Helen here. I mean, but see, people are laughing because they have this in common. They know Helen would be the one to show up in handcuffs. No. So this is what Karen and Kyle are talking about. You got to say things that people are not expecting, right? Things in just juxtaposition. Helen's not the one to show up in handcuffs. But yes, police officers who bring kids into my office in handcuffs. And I've got to somehow get this kid to confess. I got to go all NYPD blue on them and get them to confess that they were the ones that went and blew up the toilet. Because there's no video in the bathroom. So how do I get that kid to confess? And you can't just go in there, I'm going to beat you up, because he knows we're administrators. We can't do that. The days of the nun smacking your hand, wrapping them with the meter stick, that was so, 2021. We can't do that today after COVID. So I use humor. And usually it's self-deprecating humor, like Kyle said. I don't even know what self-deprecating means, but I like to say that word because the K sound is always funny. That's what Neil Simon says. Certain sounds are funny. The K sound is funny. That's why the F-bomb is so funny, right? When you F-bomb, and not just as a noun, but as a verb and as an adjective and as an adverb, F-bomb is funny because of the K sound. But it's also funny because of the self-deprecating humor that, whatever. And and it's unexpected. But if you can talk to a kid and talk to a parent and find some common ground, we can laugh about this. And usually this means this. I mean, not me, but this, my face. Usually laughing about my face is good. Kids like to laugh at my face. It's hard on a face when it gets laughed at, but it's okay. It's funny, right? This is funny. As a matter of fact, they used to say I had a face for radio. So that's what got me started in public speaking. So the idea is that you can create that common bond between yourself and your audience because you find it funny because it's shared humor. It's like when you laugh, it's like saying, yes, yes, I agree with you. Right? When you laugh at something, do you guys hear that? That's my cat. He agrees with me too, especially when he wants me to feed him. But we can laugh at things because we go, oh my gosh, that's so true. Or, oh yes, I remember that. Yes, I have that same uncle. Yes, I have that same cat. We laugh at that because it's funny. Self-deprecating humor takes the pressure off of everyone else. Like when I talk about my hair or lack thereof, everybody else like, yeah, let's talk about your lack of hair. And that way no one's thinking about my hair. All the negative attention comes to me. I can pull it this way. And everybody else feels more beautiful. Or I can say something silly. Now everybody else feels smarter. And when you can elevate people that way, when you can create a bond and a closeness, it's safer and allows them to come out from wherever they're hiding, right? People hiding behind those walls. It allows people to come out from behind wherever they're hiding and join your space. Join your space. And humor brings us together. That's why we can't use humor to bully others, because that person is being ostracized from the group, right? This group wants to make fun of that person, so we bully them by making fun of them. Instead, we make fun of ourselves, and this person will join. Back to you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you, Percy. I mean, your story is very vivid and personal. May I give you a little bit challenge since this is your first time to visit Laugh Lab Storymaster? Would you find something common?
Go ahead.
Would you find something common with us and share a laughter?
Did you say, can I find a comb? Did you just
find something in common?
First, I want to challenge you and find a comb. I'm like, okay,
something
my cat has one.
Because
My
you're
cat has
talking
a
about know your audience, find something in common and make it a laughter. Yeah.
I think something in common between all of us is even we are all people of a certain age. Look at us. You can always tell an American Toastmasters because we are all people of a certain age. You come to Toastmasters in China, they're all people of a younger age. That's the only difference between the Chinese Toastmasters and the American Toastmasters. That's the only way you can tell the difference. Well, the fact that we kind of, eat with chopsticks. Okay, we eat with chopsticks and you don't. So that's something that's funny here in China. You ever watch an American tourist try to eat with chopsticks for the first time? You got to warm up, okay? You got to warm up, folks. If you're a tourist, you want to come to China, you got to practice with this or you're going to starve. Because those little things of rice are really small. But I cheat. I don't know if I ever told you this, Ellen, but my whole time in Shanghai and in Hangzhou, I cheat. And I put the rice in a bowl. Then all I got to do is shovel it and suck it in. You can't pick it up off a plate. It's a diet to actually pick rice up off a plate. You're never going to get there, right? You never just put it in the bowl and suck it up. It's easier if it's noodles because then you just got to get the end of it in and then the rest takes care of itself. Rice, no, you got to keep working at it.
Okay, thank you for being the spoken person for China. Okay, thank you, Percy. Thank you for your very exciting session. So next, I would like to introduce our third panelist, Kyle Hall. When our third panelist joined Toastmasters, he couldn't make an audience laugh to save his life. Since then, he has learned more than a little about how to put the fun in what is fundamentally serious. Talking to us about the application of humor, please help me to welcome Kai Hall.
Thank you, Helen. My parents brought my brother and I up bilingual. We grew up speaking English and sarcasm. That was the opening line for the eulogy that I gave for my mother. My mother had died of pancreatic cancer. The night she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, she said two things. One of which is, she was diagnosed in November, just before Thanksgiving, with pancreatic cancer stage 4. She wasn't going to undergo any treatment. And that night she said two things. And it was, I'm going to live till January so that Dad can use me as a deduction on his taxes. And Kyle, I want you to do my eulogy. Now, the statement that my mother made about living till January so she can be a deduction on my dad's taxes, that tells you my mother's a bit of an odd duck. And I was kind of being honest when I said I was raised bilingual, because if you didn't speak sarcasm in our house, you couldn't communicate. Tonight, I'm going to mention a couple of things. I mean, when I put together my mother's eulogy, I started out with humor because I was going to tell 3 humor stories from her life. And the thing I've never told anybody when I've talked about the process of developing a eulogy, I've never told any other group about this, is I went through stages. And the first stage of trying to think about her eulogy, I couldn't get past my relationship with my mother. And I had some problems with her. By the time she was diagnosed with cancer, I loved my mother, but I didn't like her. But I had to let go of my relationship and wanting to make the eulogy about me. I had to let that go. And then I was thinking about just making it about my mother. And then I finally realized the eulogy isn't about my mother, because she will be dead. She won't care. And it's not about me. It's about the audience. And and that is true for any time we are presenting or speaking, but it became really true for me then. It's like, if I focus on the audience and giving the audience what they need to know, what do I want them to know about my mother? What do I want them to take home with them about my mother? And that was her sense of humor. She had a pretty good and slightly odd sense of humor. And so I put that speech together, or that eulogy together, and I presented that. And it worked well, and I got a lot of compliments on it, and not that I'm ever going to give it again. But we can take a serious subject like a eulogy, one of the most important talks you'll ever give, and lighten it up by adding humor. We can take serious talks like business talks and lighten them up and make them more memorable by adding humor. When I started to learn to do inspirational talks, it didn't involve humor. And it wasn't until I started trying to incorporate humor, that my talks actually started being winnable. And I got to make it to district. Humor is important to get there. If I had to describe for you in 60 seconds or less my process when I decide to start competing, when I decide to start putting together another world champion public speaking, international speech, the first thing I do is as I sit and I get quiet and I try to think about what message do I want to deliver? What message do I want to talk about that's important to me, that I can talk about it 40 or 50 or 100 times and not get tired of it? Okay, I come up with a message. Now, what stories do I have that involve me learning that message? And in particular, and this is the fun part, or the where the rubber hits the road here. What stories do I have of me failing to know that lesson and screwing up and learning from it? Because if I can tell a story about me screwing up and somebody stepping in to teach me, then that's a perfect story to build a speech around. It's one that I can tell. Usually I can tell it in a funny way. It's self-deprecating. I'm making somebody else the hero, the teacher. I'm not the teacher. So that really works for trying to put together a humorous speech. So if you have a serious topic that you want to speak about, look for what message you actually want to deliver, and what's your story about failing to understand that message, and use that to build your talk. And that's my 5 minutes and 30 seconds.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you. I'm always fascinated how America speaker, especially those sons of U.S. presidents, who will speak about their mom or dad, and in their eulogy in such a humorous style. I always fascinating about that. But learning from your speech, I understand it's more about focusing on audience, and I'm really intrigued by the way they describe their mom or dad in such a warm way, using humor skills. Thank you for sharing us the tips. It's always about your audience. So because of the time, I think we are about to take a 5 minutes break. So after the break, we will have 20 minutes Q&A for our panelists. So let me get back to our Toastmaster of the day, Mary. Thank you again for your great sharing.
You. Wonderful. Thank you, Helen. Thank you for all of our panelists for sharing. As Helen mentioned, we have time to take a 5-minute break. So what I'll do is ask Cheryl if she will put the green light at 4, the yellow at 4.5, and the red at 5, and I'll call the meeting back to order, giving you a chance to take just a bit of a break. Love to see everyone's faces again. If you wanted to, whatever it's called, to unmute your camera. I suppose it's something, but someone will tell me. So, and welcome Brian Besnick. Brian is the Program Quality Director for District 32. That is the home district for Laugh Lab Storymasters. Welcome, Brian. Glad you could make it tonight. So I will turn it now back to Helen to conduct the Q&A for our panelists. Over to you, Helen.
Thank you, Mary. Wow, now it's the most exciting time. Let's throw some questions to our wonderful panelists. So everyone, please feel free to type your questions or raise your virtual hand if you have any questions for our wonderful panelists. And I'd like to give the first one, which is, they said pen plus time equals to humor. Could you please give us some examples?
Can you ask the question again?
They said pen plus time equals to humor.
Sure.
Okay, please go ahead, Kai.
Sure. Yeah, the quote is that pain plus time is equal to humor, and that's an old comedian saying. If you watch a lot of people who use humor and tell humorists who tell, they often talk about themselves doing stupid things, and that's the pain. And then of course, because it's in the past and they've gotten past it and they've dealt with it, they can laugh about it. I'm thinking about my own life, that the story about the hot tub. Now that, whether I'm going to get in the clothing optional hot tub or not, that may not seem like it was a huge life-changing crisis, but it was. The tension around that issue was going to disrupt my entire weekend if I didn't deal with it. And I was going to this place to relax, this resort to relax, and I wasn't going to relax unless I dealt with it. So it would have, there was stress around it. That's the pain. Now, I was able to laugh at it after the fact. My wife laughed at it right away. She thought it was funny right away. It wasn't her pain. You know, the fact that I'm sitting there in this hot tub and I'm finally relaxing and I'm sitting there and the first person who comes up is not only a woman, it's not only a young woman, but it's somebody I know. And that was like that that was stressful and 100% true. That was stressful. And only a couple of days later when I got home and and I was able to tell my wife about it. She laughed about it, and then I was able to laugh about it. After that, until I knew how my wife was going to react to the fact that I was sitting naked in a hot tub with a classmate of hers. I wasn't prepared to laugh about that. You can any pain. Well, the best example I can give of this is the gentleman I spoke about earlier, Keith Robinson, who did an hour on his strokes. Talk about pain and time becoming humor.
Thank you, Percy. I saw Lee raise your hands. Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, unlike Kyle, I don't have a problem with a clothing optional hot tub. I would just jump in, but I would have clothes on and I'd just wait and see what happens.
Other questions?
Thank you. Well, for other panelists, Percy and Karen, do you have anything to add for this topic?
I think sometimes it does take that amount of time for something to be funny. Like we say, oh, we'll laugh about this one day, not today, but one day we're going to laugh about it. And it's a shared experience. And that's what I think sometimes teachers forget. Again, that's what I've been doing for over 30 years, right? So that's where my brain is, that they don't know how to find the humor in a situation in a classroom. One of the things that I do when I interview teachers, you start out with those easy questions and then you ramp up those very difficult questions about skills and knowledge. And right when they're all stressed out, which is usually right when you walk in a door for an interview, you're already stressed out. I tell them the hardest question and I say, okay, here comes the hardest question. 50% don't even answer it. They go, oh my gosh, what could this possibly be? And then I say, the hardest question is, tell me a joke. And they look at you like, okay, I wasn't expecting that. And they always ask me afterwards, go, why did you ask that question? I go, you ever learn from a teacher you couldn't laugh at or laugh with? And a lot of times when teachers have problems, it's because people are having a stressful moment. The kid's having a stressful moment. You're having a stressful moment. If you can't laugh at that situation, then you're going to be sunk as a teacher. And a lot of times there's something in our past. There's something in our past that had pain involved with it. And so we strike back at the student. We try to get one-upsmanship. It's like, relax. You can laugh about this. You can laugh about it right now and let it go and give focus to the kid and let them be the comedian. That's okay. Otherwise, the class is going to be over here and you're going to be over here. Laugh with them. Get over that pain of, oh, I've been demoted in my own classroom, and just say, you're right. You're good. You're good. I'm bald. I get that. You want to check for the number 666? Yeah, you can't. It's not there. You people might, So there's a lot of ways to bring about that sense of humor, even through pain. And sometimes that length of time is long and sometimes it's relatively short.
Wow.
And
Thank you.
I would just add that, we connect with people through emotion. And so if we're vulnerable enough to share a painful moment or something like that, you will reach someone you never thought you would reach. You didn't even know it would happen. I've had people come to me years after I gave a speech and they remembered it. And they were always speeches that had emotion, that had something that they connected to, whether it was a tragedy, a death, a survival, something funny, something stressful. Doesn't matter. There, you connected on a personal level because you were vulnerable. And it's not easy. And that's where I think the time piece comes in, because sometimes if it's such a difficult thing, you have to have a little bit of time to heal first before you can talk about it. But when you can, that helps the healing move on as well. So I think that it is really important to do that. And humor is, when we can laugh at ourselves, then people realize you're human, you're real, you're vulnerable, and they connect with you. You're not someone that gets it all right.
Mm.
We don't like to look wrong, but the reality is we are wrong a lot. And we do need to say it. And I mean, I recently gave a speech because I really blew it at a meeting, and I was mortified that I had done it. And I gave that speech, and every single person later came up to me and said how powerful and what it meant to them. And I thought, well, okay, I guess it was the right thing to do. But it was hard because I didn't behave in the way I would have liked. Yeah.
Great. And I like to ask a question relates to business application. Imagine if you are a business professional and you are doing a sales pitch to your client. And after you finish your presentation, your client threw you a challenging question. He basically do not like the product you present and challenge you on some of the value propositions you talk about. How could you turn that, I would say, awkward situation and make it a little bit more fun? Percy?
It's interesting because when you first said business, I thought, well, that leaves me out. But then I realized, no, I'm a teacher. I'm in the business of selling stuff that you don't want. Who wants to study math? Everybody thinks, oh, it's theater. At least you get to teach the fun stuff. You kidding me? This is a whole room full of people who understand about the fear of public speaking. That's all theater is getting over your fear of being in front of an audience. It's about the relationship. It's always about relationship. When Karen talked about connecting through that emotion, it's all about the relationship. You build that relationship with anybody. With kids, they'll run through a brick wall for you. With business, customers will purchase your product at a higher price because they trust you. They trust that the price might be a little higher now, but in the long run, you're going to give me much better service, or you're going to give me a break later on because of that relationship. Everything is about relationship. And so that's where you lead the story around. If you read the script or watch the show Glengarry Glen Ross by David Mamet, who, by the way, is a master of the F-bomb. If you really want to see F-bomb at an artistic level, he's brilliant. David Mamet. But in Glengarry Glen Ross, one of his key characters goes to his top seller, goes to this long monologue. And what he's doing is he's talking about all different kinds of people. And he's trying to suss out, don't you love that word, suss it out? He's trying to suss out this person, this client, this potential client. And he's trying to figure out, how do we connect? Where can I connect with you to make the sale? He doesn't talk about the product. You don't talk about the product. You let the customer talk about himself. And then when he opens up, you got it.
I want to play on that. And everything Percy said, I agree with. Having worked in sales support, assisting salespeople and selling computers and consulting and stuff like that, you need to understand the customer's frustration, what the problem is. And if you've done your homework up front, then you would have included all of that in your presentation. And hopefully at the end of the presentation, there isn't that they don't trust you or they don't like you. Because you've built the relationship, and they feel listened to, and you've presented it. Now, my example of that, I was working for a company called Digital Equipment Corporation, no longer exists. Not my fault. But in when was the San Francisco earthquake? Was it 2012, 2011, something like that? No, no, it was a late 1990s something. There was a San Francisco earthquake. Floor of a building collapsed, fell down, and the computer on that floor, which was from DEC, fell down, broke open, boards fell out. Next day, technician comes into work, finds the floor gone, but can see the computer they own down in the next floor down. He goes down, brings it, carries it up, finds a floor they can stand on, plugs the boards back in, plugs it in, it works. Now, that story was known all over the company, and we were talking with a customer who had a reliability problem with his computers. Mm-hmm. He had bought from somebody else, and they broke a lot. And we told that story in the presentation. And we tried to tell it in a slightly humorous, updated way. I mean, because the manager came in the day after, and he had no floor, but he had a working computer. So we told a story, maybe with a little bit of lightness to it, but it also made the point that addressed the customer's pain.
Wow, thank you, panelists, for sharing us your real and practical tips. Because we only have 5 minutes for this Q&A sessions, I'd like to give the chance to our members and guests who give relatively low rating for their sense of humor, which means they have high expectation on their humor scores. So for Cherry, Mary, and Phil, do you have any super important questions? Just grab the chance.
Phil.
No, I would. What I have observed in my humor is the times that I've been able to get an audience laughing is when I am not trying to make them laugh. It's when I just accidentally say something stupid, or I just observe something in someone else and it is accidentally humorous. So I've been listening to all of you all on the panel. What's a good way to capitalize on those kind of opportunities, but do it in a more predictable, in a prepared speech kind of situation? What's a good way for me to leverage that?
Can I answer?
Sure, go ahead.
Phil, the first thing to do is whenever you do something accidentally that makes somebody laugh, whether it's an audience, whether it's your wife or your kids, make a note. Not then. Don't interrupt the laughter to do it. Wait till later, but make a note. What did I do that created that laughter? How was that laughter created? My whole speech about my secret decoder ring, which went all the way up to the district level, is a speech about communicating with my wife. And that speech started when she said to me, "Are you going to wear that shirt?" And I called her on it. I said, "You're not really asking me a question. You're telling me to change my shirt." And we laughed about it. And I noticed, hey, wait a minute. We just created laughter. What happened there? Oh, she didn't say what she meant, and I called her on it. And that turned into the whole humor speech, because I just look for other places where she doesn't say what she really means, which is a lot. So make a note when you create laughter in your life. How did I do that? What happened there? Who was I interacting with and in what way? And just start cataloging it. And then you can look for opportunities to do it purposefully.
Awesome.
So Karen, do you have anything to add?
I would just say that the other thing I do is I keep an ongoing list of potential speech topics. So as I find myself in a funny scenario, I'm like, oh, that would be a good speech. And then I add it to my list and I categorize them and I move them around and I have a section for humor, I have a section for, important messages. I have all different kinds of things about kids, about travel, about, all sorts of things. And then I can pick, if I'm looking for humor, I can say, oh, and I use story. That's my favorite way is I use story because you can connect and find a commonality related to that. And then you can play after you've sort of worked on that, doing exactly like Kyle said, and noticing when people laughed. Ooh, maybe that's a natural thing for me. And then you can build on that. And then you can try some of the tools, the power of three, the puns, the different things, and see, do they fit? Do they not? See how they work for you and find what, as Kyle had mentioned before, what works for you. I think that's because when it's natural and it's you, then it becomes funny. When it's you trying to be funny, it's not. I mean, it comes across as fake. Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. Firstly, do you have any tips for Phil?
No.
It's
Hey,
hopeless.
Phil, I think you're a good-looking man, all right? You're a good-looking dude. You got the clothing right, you got that nice healthy beard. I think you use that. You use what you got and what I don't got. You use what you got and have a lot of fun with it. And you talk about whatever it is that's there. Oh, I knew there was something I like about you. Okay, yeah, use what you got, right? And I think people are gonna come to that because it's self-effacing and it's humble in a way, right? It's humble and it takes the pressure off of everyone else. So have a good time with that, Phil.
Wow, that's a beautiful answer and very empowering. Let's connect back to our originally start at know your strengths, so you can always play your strengths. Thank you very much for our wonderful panelists. I learned a lot from you. Humor is not only about skills, it's more about attitude, it's more about your habits, and it's about building relationships with others and also with yourself. Percy.
Helen, there was one question I wish that you had asked. Helen, would you ask me what's the most important thing about comedy?
Okay, go ahead.
No, would
Percy.
you ask me that question, please?
What's the most important thing for comedy?
Timing.
Okay.
I'll show myself out now. I'm so sorry.
Okay, with that, let's make a big round of applause for our panelists again, and hope we can learn from you next time. Thank you. Let me get back to our Toastmaster of the day, Mary.
All right. Thank you, Helen. Percy, my grandchildren tell me the story of knock knock joke about the interrupting cow, and I would tell it if I could remember how the joke goes. And unfortunately, I'm not as clever. There it was. All right. Thank you. Perfect. Well, let's go. Let me turn this control of this meeting over to our general evaluator for tonight, Lee Amatangelo. Lee.
All righty. Thank you very much, Mary, fellow Toastmasters and friends. Now the meat of the meeting, we're going to do our evaluation. As Mary mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, when we have a speaker, and sometimes we have 3 speakers, every one of them gets 3 evaluators. And so tonight, we're going to focus on story, content, and humor. And to lead us off about story evaluation, and our speaker is Percy, we're going to have Cynthia Sanderson tell us what she got about the story that he told. Cynthia.
Thank you. And thank you, Percy. It was a wonderful speech. I liked it a lot. I thought at first, what's this with the chair? And yet the story unfolded. And you said you had, at the end, at one point, you said you had 3 or 4 characters, but you forgot the chair. The chair also was a character in your story because it was your mountain. It was your student coming in to talk to you. You lifted it up, or it was on the floor. It was definitely one of your characters in your speech. And I thought your voice and your gestures were nice. I thought the camera was a little too far away. Maybe if you could get it a little closer, that would be better. But that was really my only picky point about your speech. Everything was good. I liked the title, even Who is in the Chair, although I expected the story to be more about a person or a situation based on the title, but that was me. And yet it was more about how we can deal with adversity and strength. And so, but the title kind of led me astray, but that's okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Cynthia. You have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I I like his physicality of when he told the story, like he had his feet up in the air, sitting on the chair. That didn't look like a very comfortable position to speak and work from. So I thought that was good. And I liked the analogies he used. And I think that um, I think the best thing to do to improve now, if are you gonna be in live when you give this speech? Oh, then that problem will go away. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Cynthia. And let's go on to our second evaluator who's going to talk about content and effectiveness, and that's Phil Person. Phil.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. And Furzy, thank you very much for a great speech and the opportunity to give you some feedback. My evaluation, my feedback for you is all about the structure and how things flowed from piece to piece. Since this was a international speech contest speech, we don't have a manual for that, but I think in any international speech contest, there's really three kind of goals. One is to inform, second is to inspire, and the third is to change somehow the audience perspective or what they're going to do. I'm going to come back to that at the end, but those are the three goals that I saw coming out of this for you, at least in my perspective. Before we come back, as we build up to that return to the objectives, talk about the speech mechanics. Great, you have great mechanics overall. I love that you have lots of gestures. There's lots of movement in your speech. You're using that space wisely and effectively. And like as Cynthia mentioned, I'm sure when you're live, you're going to be able to really zoom in on the audience, and people are going to feel that eye contact with you. On the Zoom, it was hard to really get that feeling of eye contact. That's the artificiality of Zoom. I'm hoping, and I'm sure you will, as an experienced speaker, look around the audience and make sure you engage, but the periphery as well in your speech. On the audience engagement, one specific thing that came to mind is I was looking for some way that I could participate in your speech without saying anything, or like an anticipated catchphrase or an anticipated thing that I could fill in the blank, maybe at least in my mind. So that would keep me engaged with your story. I would love to see you had great pauses. I'd love to hear you pause at those incredulous kind of statements. Put your feet down, like somehow what kind of now I can relate because I've rappelled and I've done zip line and I've jumped out of airplanes, so I can feel some of those condescending coaching coming from the ground below. I could feel your pain in that. And I'd love to see that pain come through even more using your speech, pauses and facial gestures during your speech. Your speech structure, opening, closing, and body, it all flowed well together. That mechanics is solid in my mind, from my perspective. And then for those soft skills, how we felt about the speech. My observation is you have great passion. You are passionate about helping others. You're passionate about helping your students. And your story is very relatable, especially for those of us that have done those kinds of things in our lives. However, my observation is I didn't get that like emotional connection during your speech. I mean, I didn't feel angry really. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel energized. That was me. And for me, I felt like the person in that chair is really that's who you're talking to. That's who, like, I need to connect with that person in the chair somehow, because that's really what it sounded like to me. That was who you wanted us to think about, that we are going to help that person in the chair, but I didn't quite get that connection. So if there's a way that you can connect me with that person in the chair, I think it would go a long ways to making that emotional connection in the speech, which will help us with that back up to our objectives, especially in inspiring and changing the audience. I need to feel connection to the person in the chair, to be inspired to do something differently to help that person, whoever that he or she is. Mr. General Evaluator.
All right. Thank you very much, Phil. I think you hit on a lot of very key points in your evaluation of Percy as well as what Cynthia did. So I am now going to give the third part of the evaluation, which is the humor. And I'm going to do this very differently for you, Percy, because if I were to be mentoring you to go to the World Championship of Public Speaking, I would want to just talk to you. And every time you spoke tonight, I learned something about you. And what I would say is that there were a lot of times where we really got into what you were saying when someone asked you a question and you responded. And I could see the audience smiling and getting in there with you. And I agree with what Phil just ended his evaluation with, is the emotional connection with your speech that you did. So who's in the chair? Let me go through your speech a little bit, then let me come back to what I learned from you every time you spoke. I found you to be very funny. And what the World Championship of Public Speaking audience wants is they want to be entertained. And you are humorous, and you also tell stories. And that's exactly, and we got into those. There was an emotional connection there, not so much with the speech that you did. I know you still have a month before you have to get onto that semifinal stage. I think there's time for you to just be you. And so let's go with who's in the chair. Who's in the chair? Maybe your opening line would be, as a teacher, I learned every student is different in how they learn. I learned to teach effectively is always based on who's in the chair. Now you've just tied the opening into that title. And I like that, who's in the chair. And as a teacher, you have to speak to every student individually. That's the person that's in that chair. Okay. So then you go, when teaching, then you turn to the audience and ask the question. Now you asked us a question up front. When teaching someone, how do you effectively reach them? Do you get down to their level and you can drop down low and speak to them eye to eye? Do you speak slowly so they can understand you? And then here's that set of 3 that we do in this club: serious, funny. Next one is, or do you give them money so they will pay attention? Something to get them to laugh, right? Of course, you could probably come up with something better than that. Now the audience is laughing. Then you go into the salutation, contest chair, fellow Toastmasters and friends, right? Then you come back to what do you want to say? If you're going to do the speech, I think you have the fodder for this speech of all the students that you've come across while you have taught. Every time you spoke tonight to answer a question, you made us laugh. You told us a story about a student. I think that's where you go with this story. This is everybody in the audience, to get back to what Phil said. We have all been students. We've all been in the chair where the teacher has been teaching. We are going to vicariously be there with you. You have now sucked us into the scenes of your little snippets of what you have learned funny incidents as being a teacher. I think that would be your speech if I were to give you a recommendation. But we can go back onto the speech that you did give. There's a line where you said, I'm going to do the humor. What could be worse than a zip line? You're telling us about how you have fear of heights. I do too have a fear of heights. Driving over a bridge is the scariest thing for me. I won't drive over a bridge. I'll look at the map and go, how can I go around this bridge? Okay. What could be funny? Oh, I don't know. Maybe jumping out of a plane with a parachute is funnier than going on a zip line. As you said, the zip line at least has the clip, right? And then you talked about the zip line is horizontal. Then we had to rappel down the mountain. That's vertical. Horizontal, safe. Vertical, very dangerous, right? You could play up on those, on the different orientation of the height. So it seems like that. And then we got to the part where, you're on the chair and you're, put your feet down. I would love to put my feet down, but maybe you haven't noticed I have a 6-pack here, a 6-pack of beer. Okay, I don't have the strength to put those feet down. There's all kinds of stuff you could do for humor there, right? Okay, then when you got to the end of your speech, many of your lines started out at the end of your speeches, we've got to. Now you're like teaching us. And a speech about teaching us is pretty much a speech about you preaching to us. I think you have a lot more fodder if you were to go back and restructure this whole speech and talk about various incidences with your students and all the things we talked about tonight. Miscommunication. Then you had that one line, as a teacher, a student comes in, followed by a policeman in handcuffs. And I'm thinking, why is the policeman in handcuffs, right? So it's the way you structure that, is right. I woke up this morning, I'm on a safari, and I shot an elephant in my pajamas. What's the elephant doing in my pajamas? That's exactly what I was thinking when you said that line. And I think Kyle put it in the chat as well. So that's what I would say for you, Percy. You have all this information about who's in the chair with your students. And a lot of the stuff you said tonight, get the audio from the recording from Kyle and go back. A lot of the stuff you said tonight made us laugh, made us smile. There was an emotional connection. My recommendation for you on humor is go make your speech about that. And so I will leave it at that. I know I went a little long. So now I'm going to go into my general evaluation today. I think the meeting overall was beautiful. Kyle got us to start on time. We had a couple of people jump in because one of our scheduled people was not going to be here. Our president was not here, so Mary jumped in that role. She was our Toastmaster. I jumped in our president's role. She was to be the general evaluator. So we all did that really well. In terms of speaking tonight, I think everybody spoke really well. There wasn't anything really distracting with their language or ahs and ums. And I really loved the way Helen ran the panel. The panel was great. All the panelists spoke and they each individually had their own little educational session up front. I thought went really well. I learned from every one of them. And even Percy, our speaker, was also one of the panelists, which is kind of cool because I always want to evaluate my own speech. I think that's probably end up being the best evaluator that night because, my canvas was so good. Okay, just kidding. So all that went really well. We were on time. We hit the exact mark, 7:22 for our break. So Helen was very cognizant of that while she was doing her end piece of her panel. So that was really, really good as well. We came back and we did the 20-minute Q&A. And I think everybody came in and gave little snippets that were really good. Our evaluator, Cynthia, focused right in there on the story. And she also caught something that I thought when you started out, firstly, it looked like you were really far away. And I would say, yeah, if you can just come a couple feet closer, you could still need, because you want us to see you fully standing. But I thought that was a really good comment that Cynthia made there. And then Phil, the emotional connection with your speech, I think was the key of Phil's evaluation there. I think we can all learn from that. Let's see. And everybody else jumped in and gave a lot of comments. I think we had a really good session on humor. What do you do to be funny? Where do you find you're funny? How do you and what I really liked when Karen was talking about doing her workshops, I thought this was really key. She would go around and talk to the members of the audience before the workshop started. And then she kicks off the workshop by, What do they all have in common? Oh, they all were stuck in traffic today. She makes a humorous comment about traffic that immediately draws them in because they all can identify that. So that was really good comment. I love that a lot. Okay, let's go ahead and do a timers report from Cheryl.
Thank you very much, Lee. I appreciate it. Let me pull up my list here. Okay, we haven't done the round robin yet for.
Okay, let's do that.
You want to do that first before I do my timing?
Yeah, sounds good. Very good. I was just looking for that as well. Let's go
Yeah.
ahead and have anybody from the audience talk about story evaluation, content, or humor. Anything that might not have been covered already. Go ahead, Nazir.
Okay, thank you, Lee. I think I like to agree with Karen McNamara about don't add humor, just uncover it. And one thing, firstly, I found out for myself, easy to find humor is have the characters dialogue, talk to each other. From there, you can pick so many humor. And my concern is about you positioning, since you're going to be physically on the stage in Anaheim, and I applaud for you, wish you the best. Are you stationed only in the middle with the chair? Because judging have to move, okay? So you have to make sure that you are moving in all four corners. That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Nazir. Go ahead, Kyle. You're on mute, Kyle. Sorry.
I'll try to do this quickly, but if you want to stay and talk about it afterwards, I'm happy to. You went 740, so it's too long. I agree with Lee that I think you need to restructure, but I have a different idea of restructuring. I love the story, the zip lining, the rappelling. It's the heart of your speech. I want you to start your speech with you upside down on the rope going, help. I think you should start there, and then you can go, and while you're upside down, you can go, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, I'm starting my speech off with a cliffhanger, literally. And then jump back in time, stand up, jump back in time, and tell them how you got there. And you go through the zip lining and you get to where you started, and then you finish the speech. Now, if you make the guy who's the rappelling master who comes up and faces you, give him the line. You know, you'd be like, how are you helping me? Or you know, how are you there? It's like, well, I thought I'd meet you where you are. Give him that line, and then that makes that your foundational phrase. It could also be your title, and you repeated that. We need to meet them where they are. If they're down, we have to get down. So I think you should, because you said you were having a tough time with the title, and I think your title is either meet them where they're at or just where they're at. And I agree with Phil. I think it might be more powerful if you could then tell a second story about dealing with a student. Something that brings us emotionally in, and where you're struggling to deal with a student, but you remembered, I have to meet them where they're at. And you change something about how you were approaching that student so that you could relate to them and deal with the situation. So that's my 2 cents.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. Karen, go ahead.
Percy, thank you so much. I think your topic and your content are very appropriate for a contest speech and for an international audience. I think it's just a matter of how you want to frame it. I had the same thought Lee did. You are funny. But in your speech, that didn't come out as much. I heard 2 things where you hung for dear life, and then you did a callback, and you were going to, people wanted you to get down because they wanted to go to lunch. Those were 2 things that stood out with a little bit of humor. But every time you interacted with the rest of us, you were funny. When they asked you, do you have a comment? You said no. You said, ask me a question about timing, and then you cut her off. You had a way of pulling that in. And I think this speech has that opportunity really well. And people love to laugh as well. And if you think about what is it that you want them to take away, what's the final thing, you might even use a repeating phrase. this, phrase that Kyle came up with, or something else that they'll remember and think about it, and it brings the whole thing together. So I think you have the content there. I would add some humor in, and then just work on the structure with maybe some of the ideas that have been suggested. But I love it. I think it's very powerful, and the topic is very appropriate for the international audience. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Karen. Anyone else have any comments for Percy? Yeah. I will.
I was just saying, thank you, Karen.
Yeah. I was going to say, anybody else have comments for Percy? And I'll jump in and kind of build off of those two things. I do like Kyle's opening. You sitting in that chair, the audience immediately is going to be going, why is that speaker in that position? They're drawn in already, right? It's like we talked about this in one of our last meetings. The best title of an opening novel is Moby Dick. They call me Ishmael, just 4 words. All of a sudden you're going, who is Ishmael? Is that your name? Why are they calling you that? Who's the they calling you that? Right? You being in that chair upside down, we have so many questions. Why is he there? But I do like that title, Who's in My Chair? Who's in the chair? Because you're a teacher and you use that chair all the way through your speech as a prop, and you even hold it up at the end. And I kind of like the idea, like everybody that I have to deal with, I have to realize who's in that chair. We vicariously learn that lesson from you. Whenever we talk to somebody, we have to know who's in that chair. I'm talking to Karen now. Who's in that chair? Oh, it's Mary. And they're different people. I have to talk differently, right? So I kind of like the title when you finally got done with it. But these are all suggestions everybody has. Any
Yeah, Lee, but he has to put his head a little lower.
Okay, go ahead, Mary. I think you have a comment.
I would just reinforce using the title "Who's in the Chair" makes me think your message is the same, then meet people where they're at. That's awkward phrasing. Meet us where we're at. Who's the we? I love the who's in the chair gives me the same message, but it makes me think I always need to meet people in the chair that they're sitting in. I have to go to them. I have to take that extra step. So I'd keep it.
Okay, I think.
Tata has a comment.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have seen so many speeches in the past of Percy, and I really laughed my heart out. Unfortunately, this speech, I didn't even smile, let alone laugh. And for the simple reason, because I came late and I haven't heard the speech. Thank you.
All righty. So I'm going to turn it back to Percy. What are you thinking about your speech? Are there comments that were made tonight that are going to help you, or?
I appreciate all of the input. I think it's terrific. I can see now where I can stretch it, and I love taking things apart and putting it back together and just keep refining it. So I'm perfectly okay with all of that. Would anyone think about the title? And Kyle, you said this. Would anyone consider the title Help?
So from my perspective, if you're going to bring in you being a teacher, I think the chair is, we walk into a classroom, what do we see? We see a bunch of chairs, and a teacher sees a bunch of students, but every student in every chair is different. If you want to go down the teacher route, and I like starting with you hanging, but then, I mean, Percy, you could go to open mic at a comedy club and just talk. And I think they're going to laugh. You have all those stories that you gave us, even eating the rice out of the bowl with the chopsticks was funny. Everything you did was fun. You just being you. And it kind of gets back to what Karen said about when you try to do a joke, it may not be funny, but when you tell something that's really happened and you are, and even Randy Harvey says this too, when you're reliving what happened, then the audience gets that emotion as well. And Randy Harvey also had a chair all the way through his speech, and 7 times that chair took on a different object or person. So I don't know. For me, I like the title now. I think I like it, especially you being a teacher and you just talking about teacher and what you learned as a teacher is a lesson that everybody in the audience is going to get. You have the storytelling and you have the humor. But I think in your speech, we didn't really get the humor when you just naturally talk, we automatically get it. I want you to be more you in your speech. Whatever you do, just be more you because you have it. You have that gift. And maybe you've been constructing the speech, but sometimes we get lost in the construction that we just try to do the words. Just be you. And I think it's going to go well. So any final comments for Percy? And we're at the red. And other than that, let's go ahead and go into our timers report, Cheryl, and we'll wrap up our evaluation.
Okay, so I'm going to let me turn off my. Okay, hold on. I'm almost there. Okay, so my timers report is Percy. I had exactly what Kyle had, 7 minutes and 40 seconds. So you have a little bit trimming there for that you need to do on the time. Karen, I started when you had the soundtrack. I started then. So you came up to be 7 minutes and 34 seconds because I didn't start when you actually started talking. I started with the, others. So Percy, you were 5 minutes, 56 seconds on the panel part. And Kyle, you were 5 minutes and 27 seconds. I didn't do the ending for the panel, but I know it was pretty much on time on the panel part that you did, Helen. Evaluation, Cynthia was 2 minutes, 24 seconds. Phil was 4 minutes, 38 seconds. And Lee, you were 5 minutes, 12 seconds. All in all, it was really good. And I think we did pretty good on the timing. This was a good meeting. So the timing was really, a little different, but it was great. Back to you, Lee.
Okay, thank you very much, Cheryl. Thank you for all the comments given to Percy. And I'm going to turn it over to Mary. We're just a couple of minutes over, but that's okay. Mary, back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, all of our evaluators. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, all of our speakers. I also made quite a few notes and learned something from each of the speakers, which to me is a successful meeting. Somebody's at a 4. I judge myself at a 4 on humor. I have lots to learn, and tonight was jam-packed. I would like to hear from some of our guests what if they saw some benefits from the meeting, or maybe there's something they want to share with us about something that they are taking away from tonight's meeting. And I'm going to kind of begin with who of our guests, as I remember you, who showed up in the sequence that you did. So I'm going to begin with Shirley.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I'm really inspired by this talk that you have on humor. This is actually my first exposure. I can't even spell humor. And, I'm new to Toastmasters. And when I'm actually producing my speeches, I find myself getting bored with myself. I said, I got to do something about these things, And this humor thing is going to be a bit of a challenge for me, but who knows? Maybe it's easy. I've never really tried it. So until I try it, and I guess that's when I'll know. And this particular meeting gave me a lot of tips. I said, wow, look at all these things that I could try and experiment with. I'm just hoping that I have a little bit of some talent into it, and I'll be able to introduce it to my story so it won't be so boring, man. I'm so bored with myself. So thank you so much. It's such a success meeting. I'm glad I came.
Thank you, Shirley. I'm glad you came too, and you're welcome to come every meeting, and you're welcome to join us if you think I'm certain, I'm 100% certain we could help you get over that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Totally. Oh, yeah. So we'll chat more.
Yeah, you should have seen Nazir before he came to our club. Then came to our club. Now look at him. Jeez. Taking off like a rocket.
So I'm going to go to Nazir next.
Thank you, Mary. And really, this club is fantastic. They give wonderful feedback. So, first, you're lucky tonight. You have got a lot of things. I owe my world championship in humorous speech for Kyle and Lee. They gave me so much tips that made me win. So maybe now you get their tips and do exactly 7:24. Too much. You have to make it less than 7. So because you have to act on the stage and move all the directions. And this is a lovely story. I love it. And good luck, man. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Nazir. Good to see you again. And you know you're welcome to come to every meeting, anytime. Feta.
Thank you so much. And I thank Nazir for reminding me and inviting me. And if there's only one thing which I took from this meeting is what Carl said. When you are in a situation and people laugh, make a note of it. Now, till now, I'm in so many situations, people laugh and I still have no idea why. And it's Nazir who pushed me. I used to be a CEO. I used to be so serious person. Nazir pushed me to take the engage into humor, and I did it. And since then, I'm no longer serious. So I guess the humor comes from the fact people are used to the CEO who used to be so serious, and now he is no longer serious. So it might come from there. Thank you, Nazir, for pushing me to take the engage, my mentor, by the way. And thank you, Carl, for that advice, because certainly I will make a note of everything when people laugh and maybe build something around it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Let me see. Brian, love to hear from you.
Well, I'm sorry I was late. I was caught up in another meeting. I'm going to have to try and catch another meeting to get more of what actually goes on here, but I appreciated the invite. And it sounds like there's a lot of things that I could use to improve my speaking, but I'm looking forward to learning and meeting a lot more people during my term this year. So look for me to start popping up in everybody's meetings.
Excellent, Brian. Thank you. We would love that. Love that. Love that. And Percy, would love to hear from you.
Yeah, it's the same thing my mother says. Okay, Mom. That's actually the topic of my other speech. I appreciated the insight. I thought this was fabulous. I think there's great feedback, and obviously you got somebody of Kyle's caliber and experience, and I'm drawing on that right now, and so that's terrific. The one thing that I was going to ask about was the lack of table topics, and the reason why I bring it up, it's not because I think everyone should do table topics as it traditionally is. I get why you pulled it out. Because in its present form of 1 to 2 minutes with 30 seconds grace period, it's tedious and boring for people who are as veteran as you all are. But if you shift it and you change it to where, okay, now your answer has to be 30 seconds. Now it has to be 15 seconds. Now it has to use this particular skill in humor. Now, when you do a table topic, it has to have an element of timing or an element of pitch variety. Then I think we're challenging each other in a more real world sense. Because you're right, no one has 2.5 minutes to talk. Your boss is going to cut you off long before you ever get there, and so will your dad. So go ahead. You got 15 seconds. What are you going to do? Here's the topic. Mom, the dinner is cold. If I were you, I wouldn't say anything at all. You're going to get hit. So, but thank you. I appreciated being here. It's great insight.
All right, wonderful. And that is an excellent ending to segue into what comes next. So as we build the year ahead for 2024, 2025, I will seriously think and about how do we incorporate a different aspect of humor, like the pace of humor and table topics with humor. So that's great. Thank you for that.